weather, but we will see through into Good Friday and into the weekend, high pressure starting to move in, settles things down for the vast majority of the weekend. So this evening, a lot of cloud across the UK, outbreaks of rain pushing slowly eastward, some heavier bursts possible, turning drier into the early hours from the west, but the risk of some heavy showers, particularly over Northern Ireland during the early hours. Temperatures holding up well above freezing due to the cloud and outbreaks of rain, but it means quite a grey start to Thursday morning. We will see some glimmers of sunshine in the north and the west, but this will be also accompanied by some heavy showers. And as we move through the day, the showers will develop, particularly across England and Wales. Some of them could be heavy and thundery at times. Rain continuing to just hold on to the Northern Isles, but best of the sunnier weather across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures reaching the mid-teens across the UK. Into the evening time on Thursday, we see an increased risk of those showers turning to longer spells of rain across eastern parts of England. But overnight, we'll see clearing skies for the rest of the UK. Under those clear skies, temperatures will start to drop away and we'll see a frost returning, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland into Scotland. Temperatures here falling to freezing, if not below, but just holding up in the southeast where we hold on to that cloud and rain. So it'll be a bit of a cloudy start across the far southeast to begin Friday morning, and then generally for the vast majority of the day, blue skies for much of the UK, though across eastern counties of England, thicker cloud, patchy light rain and drizzle is possible at times. Temperatures again around the mid-teens, and it stays settled into the weekend. Further sunny spells, temperatures above average.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion.
Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the early hours of this morning, Donald Trump responded to his arrest in a New York courtroom yesterday. We've had time to reflect. Tonight we debate and ask the question, is Trump being wronged? We go live to Bexhill-on-Sea in East Sussex, where there was the protest going on against the proposed migrant camp on the same day that a barge is announced for Portland. We'll ask about the numbers. We'll ask, within a few weeks, where on earth are they all going to go? And joining me on Talking Pints, former jump jockey, BBC racing commentator, and a man who's got the top tips for the National. In a few days' time, Richard Pittman will join me on Talking Pints. But before all of that, let's get the news with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, yes, I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Good evening to you. The Prime Minister has defended plans to house asylum seekers on a barge in Dorset, claiming it will save the taxpayer millions of pounds every year. The government's confirmed a deal has been signed, despite the threat of a legal challenge from the local district council and Tory MPs. The Bibby Stockholm, which can accommodate around 500 people, will provide basic but functional facilities and around-the-clock security. Amnesty International's labelled it ministerial cruelty, which is obscuring the government's mismanagement of the asylum system. But Rishi Sunak says it's a fair approach to tackling illegal migration.
We're spending as a country £6 million a day housing illegal asylum seekers in hotels. That can't be right. I've committed to reducing that number, moving asylum seekers out of hotels, and that means we need to find alternative sites, and including barges like the one we've brought forward today. That's going to save the taxpayer money, reduce pressure on hotels.
Nicola Sturgeon's husband, Peter Murrell, has been arrested in connection with an investigation into Scottish National Party finances. Detectives have been searching the party's headquarters, collecting evidence, and a cordon has been set up outside the couple's home. Police Scotland has been looking into the spending of around £600,000 set aside for the independence campaign. Mr Murrell resigned as the party's chief executive last month, and Scotland's First Minister Humza Yousaf says they're cooperating with the police.
People will have questions, there will be some concerns. Our party membership, of course, will have concerns too. So what I can commit to is party leaders that we want to be absolutely transparent. That's why I asked NEC to agree to a review around governance and transparency, and also to make sure it has some external input, which I think is really, really important.
21 people have been convicted of sexual offences against 7 children in Walsall who were younger than 12 when they were abused. West Midlands Police say the offences were committed over a period of almost 10 years. 3 trials have been held over the past 15 months, with reporting restrictions in place until their conclusion. The offenders will be sentenced next month. And the chair of the blood inquiry says compensation for victims should be extended as some family members remain unrecognised. Thousands of patients were infected with HIV and hepatitis C through contaminated products in the 1970s and 80s. Last year, the inquiry recommended victims or their bereaved partners should receive an interim payment of £100,000, and it's now urging the government to widen the scheme to include orphaned children and parents who lost children. TV online, DAB+, radio and on TuneIn. This is GB News. Now it's back to Nigel.
Well, after those dramatic events yesterday that we covered live here on this show of Trump being arrested and charged in a New York courthouse, it was his turn to respond, which he did at 1:15 a.m. our time in the ballroom at, of course, Mar-a-Lago, Florida. He spoke for 25 minutes. Here are just some of the highlights.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it. From the beginning, the Democrats spied on my campaign. Remember that? They attacked me with an onslaught of fraudulent investigations. Russia, Russia, Russia. Ukraine, Ukraine, Ukraine. Impeachment hoax number 1. Impeachment hoax number 2. The illegal and unconstitutional raid on Mar-a-Lago, right here. And just recently, the FBI and DOJ, in collusion with Twitter and Facebook, in order not to say anything bad about the Hunter Biden laptop from hell, which exposes the Biden family as criminals and which, according to the pollsters, would have made a 17-point difference in the election result. And we needed a lot less than that, like about 16.9. It would have been in our favor, not my favor, our favor, because our country is going to hell.
Well, that's a flavour of what Donald Trump had to say. The country is going to hell. They've been against me from day one. Endless investigations. And, of course, he mentions Hunter Biden. But what I said to you yesterday was that former American presidents have done some dreadful things, but they've always been pardoned. This is, to remind you, the first time ever a serving or former president has received criminal charges. So, is he? Is it a case that Donald Trump has finally been caught out for his crimes and his dishonesty? Or is Trump being wronged? And I have to say, it is the completely unequal application of the law in America that says to me there is something very wrong here. It is the fact that the prosecutor, the man himself, Alvin Bragg, in New York, was elected as a Democrat prosecutor with a promise that he would get Trump. And there are other possible indictments coming from Georgia and elsewhere, again, all from Democrats. I think the American judicial system has an absolutely fundamental flaw in it. It is massively, overly politicised. It's not serving a good purpose anymore, and I worry that people will lose complete faith, trust and confidence in it. And if they do, well, they may well then decide to take things into their own hands, which is not what we want. The reason we have democracy is so that we can agree to disagree, but to do so in a peaceful and relatively civilised environment. Certainly within the Republican Party, Trump's status has improved hugely. He was marginally ahead of Ron DeSantis in the polls for who should be the next presidential candidate. He is now miles ahead of Ron DeSantis and anybody else that could potentially enter this race. Is Trump being wronged? Give me your thoughts and your views, please. Farage at gbnews.uk. And we're going to have on, over the course of this programme, we're going to have on people, we're going to have on lawyers, we're going to have on commentators. But what I have noticed, and we saw it last night with people coming onto this show, what I have noticed is there are many on that wing of the Republican Party that don't particularly like Donald Trump. I'm thinking particularly of the Utah senator and former presidential candidate Mitt Romney, and people like Alan Dershowitz, the lawyer, who was on this show last night, a lifelong Democrat voter, opposed to most of Donald Trump's policies, but saying that what is happening here simply isn't right. It's not within the spirit of the American Constitution. It doesn't observe due process, and that it's a bad thing for America. And I tell you what, what's bad for America is also bad for Western civilization. All of that to come later. Next up, we're going to go live to Bexhill in East Sussex, where a planned meeting of the council has been cancelled for fear of protests. But the protests are taking place anyway. Anyway, we'll be in Bexhill in a couple of minutes.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Click that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today. Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So, some of your thoughts. Has Trump been wronged, is the question that I asked you. One viewer says, Trump being wronged is small potatoes compared to what this actually symbolises. The Dems' obsession with Trump will embolden America's enemies. Well, that may well be true. And he goes on to say, remember the completely avoidable, unnecessary Biden-led disaster in Afghanistan. And I repeat the point I made yesterday. Great civilizations and empires through the history of mankind tend to fall because of conflicts from within rather than conflicts from without. And I reckon in Beijing yesterday, they were laughing their socks off. Simon says, no, he hasn't been wronged, but doesn't add any more to that. Deborah says, shameful what they are doing to Trump, definitely a witch hunt. And Stephen has a constructive suggestion, which I do not think is going to be taken up. Biden has said he won't come to the coronation. But Stephen suggests that Trump should represent the USA at the coronation. I don't think Prince Charles really wants that, or King Charles rather really wants that, and I can't see it happening. So a big day on migrant stories. Before we go to Bexhill, let me just show you some footage that I had not seen before. It's Albanian footage from a beach in the north of France. Just have a look at this. So last year, when I was in the channel, we managed to film people throwing their iPhones and their documents into the English channel. Nobody had seen that before. What you're seeing there are people, and that is Albanians, because it's Albanian music and words, and they're burning their rucksacks. They're burning all their ID documents before they make the crossing. And this is the point. It isn't just large numbers of young males coming into the country. It's large numbers of undocumented young males who we can't check for previous criminal records or anything else. Now, Ray Addison is our South East of England reporter. Former HM prison North Eye, just outside Bexhill, has been put down on a list to take 1,200 young men. There was due to be a council meeting tonight about it. It's been cancelled. But Ray Addison is there with a crowd of protesters anyway. Ray, tell us, I mean, I understand the meeting's been cancelled, but still, people have turned up.
Yeah, the town council may have cancelled Nigel, the meeting this evening, but that hasn't dissuaded residents from coming down here to the centre of Bexhill to express their views. Now, the North Eye site is only about 2.5 miles away from here. It's had an interesting life over the last 30 or so years. It's been an RAF base, it's been a prison, it was used as a training facility by the United Arab Emirates government, and of course now the plan of the Home Office is to house 1,200 single male asylum seekers in that accommodation. It's upset a lot of the locals. They feel like they haven't been consulted on that. And of course, that meeting that was supposed to go ahead today was cancelled because of fears that residents would confront councillors and other officials here. However, locals very much wanting to have their say. Pretty good turnout, well over 100 people here, and a peaceful protest with people expressing their views. Now, Jenny Smith is a local resident. She's helped to organise today's event. She joins me now. Jenny, why have people been meeting here today?
They're very angry that North Eye is being proposed as a site. We weren't informed about any of this. Mr. Merriman said he only knew last week. 1,200 single males aged 18 to 30, 2 miles up the road, in a place which is a quiet seaside town full of old age pensioners and mostly old people. And they will be allowed out at night till 11 o'clock. If they don't go home, they just get a phone call to ask why.
Now, of course, the Home Office is saying that there will be security in place and there will also be proper facilities and resources for these people, so that there's plenty for them to do within the accommodation. Why are you so concerned?
Because they will be allowed out and they will roam the streets. The Little Common being their nearest town, which is a very small village full of old people, and there is nothing there for them to do, so they will probably go down there and drink or whatever. There's just nowhere around here for anyone to do anything.
Now, the area where they're going to be accommodated, it's a residential area. It's been used by families and children as almost a play area as well. Is that one of the big concerns? It's so close to young families, and perhaps a better location should have been sought?
Yes, it's actually in the middle of nowhere. It's about 1.5 miles out in the countryside. There's a garage nearby, a local bus service, but there's very little for anyone to do. People are scared that their children are going to be locked in because they won't be allowed out. Things will have to be locked up. People will have to lock their houses up. Nobody knows quite who is going in there because they're all illegal. So.
Now, we've heard there's already been an impact on house prices. Been speaking to people who've had offers withdrawn or reduced because of this announcement. Is that a factor as well?
Yes, my friend owns Bexhill Estates. They've had 3 withdrawals from vendors from London in the last week. House prices will plummet if they know this is going to go ahead.
So what's the plan then? What are residents saying here today they should do to try and prevent this from happening?
They want to try and find a legal loophole before this actually goes through properly. Hugh Merriman is meeting with a few lawyers tomorrow who hope to try and put their case towards him. Just a protest to show as many people are concerned about this, to make people listen to us, because nobody seems to know what's going on.
Jenny, thank you very much for joining us. Nigel, of course, the Home Office is saying it does have a legal obligation to provide safe accommodation to destitute asylum seekers. And, of course, they're saying as well this site could actually have some benefits for the local community. It could help to create new jobs, and it could also bring new investment into the area.
Yeah, they always say that. Ray Addison, thank you for that report. And thank you, Jenny, for joining us there. Jenny's the sort of woman that the Times newspaper will describe, of course, as being a far right-wing thug. But clearly she's not. And no site is suitable, because nowhere is this wanted. I genuinely thought last week that we could save RAF Scampton. I thought the business plan that was in place was good enough for us to help to stop it. But no, it's going to go ahead. And today it's been announced that, yes, Portland in Dorset is going to get a barge, a big barge. It's called the Bibby Stockholm. It'll take just over 500 young men. They'll be housed on this barge. The local MP, Richard Drax, is absolutely enraged. I am unimpressed at the way the Home Office has, in effect, force the barge and 500 single young adult men that will live on it onto a very sensitive holiday destination without having the courtesy to consult with anyone other than Portland Port. The barge will be a quasi-prison, with a bus taking small numbers of migrants at a time into Weymouth. Who will monitor them? What will they do? What if they don't return? These are just some of the questions to which there are no answers. Well, Richard Drax, I understand the anger. I understand the anger of voters, but I'm not sure it's going to be a prison, because those photographs we just played on your screen show that there are pool halls, there are bars, quite up-to-date modern washing and toilet facilities. But that is where we are. Now, there is emotion. Always emotion in this debate, huge emotion in this debate, but there are also facts. I've got with me Tony Smith, the former Director General of UK Border Force. Tony, as ever, welcome. Before we get to the problem, the first one being that 500 have come in the last 2 days, so that barge is filled. And the North Eye site in Bexhill, 1,200 young men. August the 22nd last year, 1,295 came in one day. But before we get to that, facts. Facts matter in this. And the Prime Minister claimed recently that the asylum backlog that we currently have was only half of the number of outstanding claims when Labour left government in 2010. And the UK statistics watchdog has come back in the form of Sir Robert Choate, and has said that actually the backlog, if we go back to 2010, was actually only a fraction of what it is now. At the time of asking, at the end of last year, the backlog was 132,000, but if we go back to 2010, it was 19,000. Is the Prime Minister deliberately misleading us, or would I be being unfair?
I think the problem, Nigel, is a lack of corporate memory in the Home Office on all of these statistics and all of these figures. As you know, I worked there throughout that entire period. I worked there for 40 years. I lived through...
So it is your fault?
Of course it is. But, I mean, the big problems were actually before 2010. That was the biggest intake we had was 2002, actually. That was when we had these sorts of numbers coming across in the ferries. So we did develop a very, very big backlog in the early 2000s. But by the time we got to 2010, we'd done a number of things in the UK Border Agency, of which I was part, which was called intake reduction. On the one hand, so we did a lot of work to put our resources into France to stop people coming across. They were coming in the ferries and on lorries those days, to be fair, not on boats. But we did a lot of work on the French side to reduce intake. I was part of that. And we did a lot of work on removals, Nigel. We sent a lot of people back.
I mean, thousands every year were being sent back.
We had targets. I had teams of officers who had removals targets, and your job was to take cases from start to finish to removal stage.
So how is it that it was politically acceptable under a Blair and then Brown Labour government to deport thousands of people who shouldn't be there, and suddenly we can't get rid of anybody?
Well, I think there's been a number of things that have happened in the Home Office in recent years, Nigel. The Windrush scandal was absolutely knocked them for six. These problems with the small boats, they haven't really been able to get a grip of in terms of investment in removals. A lot of the cohorts that are coming across now are really quite hard to remove because they come from countries that simply refuse to take people back, even if they're refused asylum, which is where Rwanda came from. But the biggest problem of all for me have been all of these legal barriers to removal. So every time, as an immigration officer, the immigration officers watching this programme will empathise with this. They arrest somebody and they'll say, right, I've got somebody here, he's as far as we know, he's removable. The next day there will be something that will crop up, and then something else will crop up, and then you saw what happened with Rwanda last year. You were covering that live as the plane was on the runway. There was a lawyer in the European Court persuading a judge who had nothing about this, really. Ex parte hearing, the Home Office didn't even get to put their side of the story to say, well, no, I'm sorry, we need to... And this has been the problem. Delay, and the Home Office will get the blame for this. Politicians will say it's all the fault of the Home Office. They should clear these cases really quickly. Not fit for purpose.
Years ago.
The only way to clear cases really quickly is grant them all. Do people really want us to grant...
But isn't this interesting? Because actually, if you take Albania, for argument's sake, France and Germany last year issued 0 asylum claims to Albanians, yet 50% of Albanians that come here get granted asylum status. So yes, you can clear the backlog by effectively letting everybody in. We have now deported some Albanians, I understand.
Yeah, if you look at the latest figures, which kind of proves my point, Nigel, there is a direct correlation between intake reduction and removals. As we've started, and immigration enforcement, I know, have been tasked with the duty of finding Albanians who now they've got a grip of all these outstanding claims. They've accelerated those through the system, and they've said, go and get them, and they're being sent back, visibly sent back. The Albanian intake on the boats has dropped remarkably in the last few weeks because the word is out. Social media is a huge accelerator in all of this. The prices on TikTok have even dropped.
Oh, they have sales.
So I've just proved my point, I think, or this proves my point, that a concerted effort on removals. Have they got removals targets? Yes, of course there's places. It's really difficult in some countries. What about Rwanda? What about other countries we can send people? Is there a dedicated line of effort between casework enforcement right across from border force arrival, and then you've got these accommodation problems, because we're simply not equipped, Nigel, to be able to deal with these.
Well, let's come back to that, because in the last week we've had the Scampton announcement, we've had the Essex former RAF base announcement, we've had the Bexhill announcement, we now have the Portland barge announcement. Something might happen at Catterick, but no one's really decided, because it's the PM's constituency, what it'll be. So about 5,400 spaces have been cleared over the course of the last week. Yet, you know, 5,000 could come in a calm week in June. This Saturday and Sunday, the forecast for the channel is flat calm. At least 500 will come. Are we not in danger this year, given the number of hotels that have already been used, the amount of private accommodation that's already been used, the shortage of barges and other structures? Are we not in danger this summer of simply being overwhelmed?
So we need to go back to the asylum support system. That was set up in 1999. The plan always was that you would go to Section 98 accommodation, that's a hotel, for just a week or two. Because whilst you made an application for Section 95 accommodation, which was provided by contract in communities, these were rented self-catering capable. You would stay in that until your application, then you go to Section 4 accommodation, and then you'd be removed. So there was a process put in place, a conveyor belt to deal with a certain number of people. Everybody's in Section 98 still. They're all stuck at the front end. The hotels are even bursting now. So there needs to be a fundamental review of asylum support. Don't forget, the only people that get asylum support are people who claim to be destitute on arrival. If you turn up from a boat and you say, oh no, I've got a brother in Walthamstow who can look after you, you'll get bail to your brother's address. So we don't put everybody there, but it suits a lot of people actually to claim destitution and go into this elongated support system, and the government is playing catch up the whole time, and I just don't know when they will catch up, Nigel.
It's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. Final question, final thought, Tony Smith. Do you fancy coming back out of retirement?
Well, I'm passionate about the whole business because I just believe in the rule of law, Nigel, and I hear all these arguments about what's illegal and what's illegal. In my day, the laws were passed over there, and if a law was passed that said your duty as an immigration officer is to arrest and deport people who have no right to be, if they're lawfully here, coming lawfully, no problem at all, very welcome, but there has to be a welcome in the hillsides, and I fear we have lost control. You've got even controlled migration, 500,000 a year now. These numbers on top, you can see why there's community unrest, and that's why the government are prioritising it. But there's a lot of, it's shutting the door after the horse has bolted, I'm afraid. And they've really got to get a grip quickly on removals. That's my view.
Tony Smith, thank you. And there you are, Rishi Sunak giving you all these comforting words. He says by using the barges, by the way, we're going to save money. No, we won't save a penny. We might just not spend quite as much per night on their accommodation as we would in a 4-star hotel. It's all spin, no substance. I promise you, it's going to get worse before it gets better. In a moment, we'll talk about Trump's legal case and whether he really is, in the eyes of the law, being wronged.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it. like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Well, I'm joined down the line by Scotty Nell Hughes, who is a journalist and a political commentator from Nashville, Tennessee. Let's get a flavour of what people thought about that Trump speech that took place 1:15 a.m. our time. Scotty Nell Hughes, when you see what happened in that Manhattan courtroom and you see the response that we got last night from Donald Trump, I want to ask you as a commentator a simple question. Do you believe that Trump is being wronged?
Well, simple answer is yes. But let me tell you this, Nigel, from the same country that has brought the world the great productions of the Kardashians and Dog and the Bounty Hunter, I think we have literally outdone ourselves this time with the fictional work of the 34 counts that the Bragg indictment brought us. I mean, it's got everything in it, Nigel. It's got mystery. It's got comedy. It's got the tears of the American media. Most importantly, it's got the star that makes every production number one, Donald J. Trump in the middle of it. And let me tell you, you know him just like I know him. He is absolutely using this and capitalizing on it as he should to point out what is wrong with America today and the injustices that are happening and the corruption going on within the government.
So you think this will make him stronger, not weaker? I wonder, you see, will voters in the middle ground, the undecideds, will they warm to his cause given what's happened?
Well, I know 10 million reasons, which reflect the $10 million that he has raised off it, which gives me confidence that this will actually help Donald J. Trump in the end. Listen, the real problem with 2020 and why he lost, and we can analyze it, but the main reason why people were not engaged. His voters did not show up at the polls, especially in the key cities that he needed them to. He also did not bring the independence that he did in 2016. This right here makes every American who has ever felt that they've been wronged or targeted by the government, whether it be local or federal, who's ever had to fight the IRS for a penalty they didn't think they had. This makes Donald J. Trump, the billionaire, extremely relatable. And that's why this is going to work in his advantage in the end, because everything they keep throwing at him, not only is it going to get old, but it'll give him the platform to talk about the corruption that he believes, rightfully so, exists within the U.S. government currently.
Okay, strong opinion there. Thank you, Scotty Null Hughes, for that. Let's go legal now on this. I'm joined down the line from Phoenix, Arizona, by Mark Brnovich, who was the two-term Attorney General of that great state until January of this year. Mark, welcome back on the programme. Can I just ask you this? There were 34 criminal charges laid yesterday. It seems to me that basically the problem is accountancy. Would that be right?
Yeah, Nigel, it's great seeing you. Thank you for having me on again. And, you know, I was a federal and a state prosecutor before becoming the Attorney General. And when I read through these 34 counts, I couldn't help but think of an old American commercial where you ask, where's the beef? Because literally, this is what we would call here when I was a prosecutor, a process crime. You ask yourself, was anyone hurt? I used to prosecute Medicaid fraud cases. Did someone steal taxpayers' dollars? I mean, so there's really, I used to tell young attorneys that if you can't describe the crime and how the public was wronged or hurt in 30 seconds or less, you probably shouldn't bring the case. And so I would ask all of my, you know, liberal or Democratic friends, please explain this case and who got hurt as a result of a non-disclosure agreement Donald Trump signed with some adult film stars.
Yeah, it is difficult, I must say. It is difficult to see exactly what the crime is. But, Mark, an even bigger question with Donald Trump, an even more fundamental question, I think, for America, its constitution, its society, is, and you've been a long-term, you know, lawyer, prosecutor, attorney general, does this not make tens of millions of Americans look at your judicial system and ask whether it really works anymore?
Yeah, and that's the thing that breaks my heart, Nigel, because I think of, you know, more than 200 years of the credibility our American constitutional system had, and, you know, what we've brought to the world and what we talked about, how important the rule of law is, that no person's above the law. But at the same time, our system is all based on the law treats everyone equally. That's why Lady Justice has a blindfold. And to me, this seems so blatantly partisan. It seems so political. It's such a stretch. And once again, if you take these facts, take out the name Donald Trump, would this case be going forward? I think no self-respecting prosecutor anywhere, Republican or Democrat, would bring this case. And what I'm worried about is this sets a precedent where the United States is going to end up like other third world countries where we settle our political differences through the criminal system. And so now this is the beginning of the weaponization of our justice system, which is a dangerous, dangerous precedent.
Absolutely. Mark Brnovich, you're now our legal eagle. We will come back to you as this develops over the course of the next weeks and months. And thank you for joining me again here on GB News. In a moment, it's time for Talking Pints. I'll be joined by former jump jockey, Grand National tipster, former BBC commentator Richard Pittman. See you in a couple of minutes.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Richard Pittman, welcome to Talking Pints.
Yes, good health to you.
Good to see you.
Yeah, you look good. You've got a shine on your coat. You're okay.
Now, I mean, it was quite right that you were born in Cheltenham, really, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
As things turned out.
Yeah, love it.
But academically, at school, not a great success.
No, I failed all 9 of my O-levels, and I, being cocky little fellow, I thought, where it said, in those days, it didn't get percentage, it said so-and-so F, 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 and I thought that meant fantastic! Yeah. No, sorry about that.
Why horse racing? And why jump racing?
Well, horse racing because I'm uneducated and I was small and I was light enough. I could ride, you know, and what other things could I have done? So... But do you know, Nigel, it took me 4 years riding in small 5-6 horse stables to get a winner.
Did it really?
And 60 rides in 4 years. I'm amazed I then was able to continue.
And financially, must have been a heck of a struggle.
Yeah. I mean, of course it was. Yeah, I mean, you were on a stable lad's wage, you know. But you're always looking. You always think the next horse is going to be the one.
Yeah, and in the end, you started to ride very, very good horses. But as a profession, as a job, as a game to be in, being a jump jockey, I mean, I think you're all crackers. I mean, just talk us through some of the injuries that you had over the years.
Well, a pretty nasty one was a star fracture in the ankle where it just went poof. I landed running. Now, it's all about horse and rider seeing a stride going to a fence, you see. And the better the rider, John Franken, was outstanding, the further away from the fence he could get his stride pattern right. And I'd had a couple of winners at Sandown Park, and I was going for my 3rd one, so I'm thinking, well, there'll be a picture on the front page. It was Sporting Life in those days, so I wasn't particularly pretty, you know. So I got down and started to do that, you see, and get a bit of style on. And the horse, although I got him lined up for a stride, felt me relax, so he relaxed. And he put in a little short step and went sideways, pushed me out of the saddle, and I landed on my one leg in front of him. At probably 35 miles an hour. And it star fractured, and it took 7 silver screws in it, you know, horrible. But shoulders wrenched out, not just fall out, but wrenched out. Most bones broken, but probably the potentially worst was concussion. I was a little fat fellow, and I used to get concussion. Out I'd go, land on the head. And they were going to warn me off if it continued.
Really?
So, even though it happened so fast, a fall, you then, under the guillotine almost, had time, when you're going out, to think, oh, my head. So you'd roll up in a ball before you hit the ground, and then you'd break your collarbone or dislocate the shoulder again, you know.
And you lost the sight of an eye as well.
Yeah, I got kicked with two feet in the face and reconstructive surgery, and the optic nerve was damaged. So, you know...
But all this stuff that you're going through and other jump jockeys are going through, do you suffer with confidence getting back on a horse?
No, you love it.
You are mad, aren't you?
But the moment you're not excited about it, you know, go out and do something else.
Now, you rode some big winners.
Yeah,
as the years went by,
yeah.
you know, the King George VI
Yeah.
and Whitbread and things like this.
Champion
but I mean,
Hurdle, yeah.
Champion, and wonderful races
Yeah.
that you won. But I mean, the Grand National, this extraordinary race, and you were second a couple of times in the Grand. But one of your rides in the Grand National, even though it's 50 years this year, is one of the... And, you know, in 10 days' time, it's the National. And when we see the commentary and read the papers, they will talk about you being on crisp, losing by half a length to Red Rum, won't they?
Oh, my God, it's coming out again. But it was so exciting. The difference, why this race has stood the test of time, A, Red Rum went on to win 3 times and second twice. So he was a big catalyst in saving the National, because it being sold, or was being sold, to Bill Davis, a property developer. You know, so everyone in racing got together. But we went off in front. He had won the 2-mile champion chase. He's now going over 4.5 miles. With top weight, anyone with brains would say, right, you put him out the back, as if when you were in your jogging days, you get him behind a bus, you know, and it pulls you along in the vacuum. But he was such an enthusiast. You couldn't do that. 40 runners, Nigel. Yeah. Noise.
Cavalry charge.
Yeah, and you think if you're in behind, you've picked a spot, you're going to jump it, 3 strides away, 4 horses going across you, you know. Yeah. So the plan was to make the running and slow it down. Usually, if a senior jockey is dictating a pace, the others might listen. But Crisp loved jumping and galloping. And so we set off in the inside where the brave men went. The drops were steeper, the turns were shorter, going around the inside. And he gradually, through quickness of jumping, got his lead. And coming past the stands for the first time, 25 lengths in front. And that in itself, you know, I'm used to noise and jockeys shouting and horses exploding when they hit a fence. There was silence. It was an eerie feeling. But you see, having got him in a rhythm, I didn't want to break the rhythm.
Coming second in the National, famous race, did you feel... You must have felt pleased with the way you'd ridden, overall.
No other jockey would. I rode a great race. He gave me a great ride until after the last, when his stamina had gone.
And you were beaten by a great horse.
Yes, but Nigel, when it's like a car running out of petrol, pricking balloon. Once the stamina goes, the old legs, instead of doing that, are doing that. And even his ears went...
Now, 10 days' time it's the National. I'm going to be there. I can't wait to be there. What have you got for us, Richard Pittman? What do you fancy?
Well, rather boringly, because the course has got easier, it's not... The fences are low. The Beecher's Brook is now no drop. So... It's more of a long-staying race, but you've still got to stay 4 miles and a couple of furlongs. The fences have to be jumped and the 40 runners, so there's still lots of obstacles. Last year's winner, Noble Yates, I think he'll win again. He's gone up £19, but he was third in the Cheltenham Gold Cup last month off level weights, a level-weighted championship, third running on. He is the one to be frightened of.
That's the tip of the top. And there is an outsider called Minella Trump at 80 to 1 for those who want a political bet.
He's still an outsider.
Richard, for all the ups and downs of this career that you clearly loved, but suddenly 1 minute Pittman's the rider and the next minute he's on the telly.
Yes,
and you got this job with the BBC and you stayed there forever.
37 years,
37 years.
But, you know, in those...
You were telling me earlier that, you know, your first day there at the Beeb as a commentator, you meet the great Sir Peter O'Sullivan, who gives you a piece of advice.
Well, he was God in the BBC, you know. He didn't deal with the producer. He went up to the owner, you see, or the boss, head of it, I went up and said, Peter, you know, very humbly, could you give me some advice, please? Because I was a jockey, uneducated jockey one day. 4 days later, I've got a microphone. He said, yes, Richard, keep talking rubbish just like you did as a jockey. You'll be fine.
A lot of us, millions of us, are sports fans. You know, some of us love all sports, some like individual sports. What is it, and you did it for all day, what is it that makes a good sport commentator? You know, you stood the test of time. You were good at it. What are the qualities?
Oh, you've got to know your horses and the colours. I watch American jumping now. It's pathetic. 8 runners in a race, and they don't see the fallers, don't pick them up. You know, over here, 40 runners. Yeah. And Peter O'Sullivan used to hand over to John Hamner going to the first. 40 runners with the sun behind them. They look like 40 black blobs, and he had to identify them. And often at the first, you'd get 12 fallers, or you know.
Yeah.
So homework.
Homework, and a way of speaking?
Yes, but more colour of the horse. You know, there's a grey horse in it this year. A lot of ladies will want to back a grey horse. But also style of jockey. You know, some will ride with a level back, others will be upright a bit. You know, some have their backside in the air.
You've got to know your stuff. How is it, Richard Pittman, for the boy that failed 9 O-levels, that in the last few years you've produced books?
Oh, well, that's easy enough.
Novels?
Yeah, but I haven't written one for 25 years. I could only sell 20,000, which a lot of people would be delighted to sell. But it was a lot of work when I'm doing other things. I have actually 2 books in my desk drawer now. One is being illustrated, and the other one was for a film. And they loved it until it went about 4 floors up. And then the guy in charge said, I want a few more twists here. I want a girl rider who's been abused and is from an African country. So I said, look, I don't want to research this. So I can make that into a book.
But you've got more books to go. And a final thought, Richard Pittman, you were recently a kidney donor. What prompted that?
A friend of mine had 2 in his life, and he wouldn't take a live one. And I saw, when he got one, from an accident, I saw what it did to him. It changed the man's life. And I thought, well, if it can do that for my friend Tim Gibson, I can give it to someone else. Most satisfying thing I've ever done, apart from meeting you.
Well, that's very, very good of you. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you.
Can I just give you one thing?
Oh, here we go.
There are 2 horses. If you go by names...
Yep.
No, but one is, like you, Mr. Incredible.
Right.
And the other one is how you used to be, the big dog.
We are not here to give advice on gambling. Richard Pittman, thank you very much indeed. Right. OK, it's time for Barrage the Farage. What does today's crop hold for me? Robert asks, are we looking at the start of a second civil war in America? Robert, we hope and pray that we're not, but the worry, and I expressed it yesterday quite fully, and I think Mark Brnovich, the former Attorney General, of Arizona, said if people lose confidence in the legal system, lose confidence in the political system, and lose confidence in democracy, then we're in a very, very worrying place. Why the Democrats want to push this the way they do, I don't understand. It's almost as if they're trying to provoke Republicans' supporters into behaving badly. It's dangerous, it's bad, and it's wrong at every level. Alex asks, oh, Alex, honestly, how can I answer this? What do you hope to achieve by your next birthday? Alex, I hope by my next birthday to be a little bit fitter than I am now. I'm not doing too badly, really, given how I've lived much of the last 40 years, but I'd like to be a little bit fitter by my next birthday. I've got PTPP, and the AUKUS deal suggests that the Tories are trying to make Brexit work. Are you getting a little bit more optimistic? Mary, it's a good thing, if we sign up to trade deals that make it more difficult for us to rejoin the European Union. That's a good thing. Fascinating how the Financial Times and the media are playing down any potential benefits from signing up with pretty much the fastest growing trade bloc in the world, but that's what we have to fight. The Conservatives, ever so slowly, are getting into the right place. Ever so slowly. But on many other things, particularly the cross-channel boats, they're failing pretty miserably. But that's my view. And I love saying these things before I introduce Jacob Rees-Mogg, because it really upsets him. Jacob!
Nothing upsets me. You must know that by now.
No, I know. What are you going on this evening, Jacob?
Well, we're going to start with the nanny state, because we're being told we mustn't use power showers and that there should be more syntaxes. Now, I'm a great one for nannies. I think nannies are the backbone of Britain. But we don't want to be told what to do by the government. And we're going to be talking about the road system as well. And why is there this continued war against the motorist. It all ties in with the nanny state approach.
Yeah, I saw Robert Jenrick got banned for driving, doing 68 and 40, and got a big fine. You know what? I've driven for 40 years on the motorway without a single speeding ticket, but now I could lose my licence in 10 minutes on smart motorways.
Well, that's the problem. And they set these 40-mile-an-hour limits for roadworks where they're not doing anything.
I know.
And it goes on and on for miles
and
and
over
miles.
there on the embankment, it's a 20-mile-an-hour limit, 24 hours a day.
Which is bonkers.
We could go on forever.
We could.
But we can't, because we've got to see what the all-important weather holds in store for us.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst and welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. There is quite a lot of cloud across the UK at the moment. Outbreaks of rain followed by heavy showers, but it should turn drier from Friday and into the Easter weekend. Low pressure in charge at the moment, bringing that cloudier, wetter weather, but we will see through into Good Friday and into the weekend, high pressure starting to move in, settles things down for the vast majority of the weekend. So this evening, a lot of cloud across the UK, outbreaks of rain pushing slowly eastward, some heavier bursts possible, turning drier into the early hours from the west, but the risk of some heavy showers, particularly over Northern Ireland during the early hours. Temperatures holding up well above freezing due to the cloud and outbreaks of rain, but it means quite a grey start to Thursday morning. We will see some glimmers of sunshine in the north and the west, but this will be also accompanied by some heavy showers. And as we move through the day, the showers will develop, particularly across England and Wales. Some of them could be heavy and thundery at times. Rain continuing to just hold on to the Northern Isles, but best of the sunnier weather across Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures reaching the mid-teens across the UK. Into the evening time on Thursday, we see an increased risk of those showers turning to longer spells of rain across eastern parts of England. But overnight, we'll see clearing skies for the rest of the UK. Under those clear skies, temperatures will start to drop away and we'll see a frost returning, particularly across parts of Northern Ireland into Scotland. Temperatures here falling to freezing, if not below, but just holding up in the southeast where we hold on to that cloud and rain. So it'll be a bit of a cloudy start across the far southeast to begin Friday morning, and then generally for the vast majority of the day, blue skies for much of the UK, though across eastern counties of England, thicker cloud, patchy light rain and drizzle is possible at times. Temperatures again around the mid-teens, and it stays settled into the weekend.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes & Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on. He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes & Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the tomorrow's newspapers tonight. Some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway,
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've got a brand new lineup every Saturday night on GB News.
From 6 p.m, I'll give you my unique take on the world today.
Then at 7, it's me, Calvin Robinson, with my Common Sense Crusade.
New to GB News is the Saturday 5.
5 times the opinion. Join us every Saturday from 8 p.m. as we debate the week's stories.
With us 4, plus a special guest.
And at 9, of course, it's Mark Dolan Tonight. Brand new Saturday nights on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello, good evening. It's me, Jacob Rees-Mogg. On the bill of fare tonight, State of the Nation. For starters, it's the nanny state, the perennial problem posed by the pestilent proponents of New Labour. First they took your cigarettes, now they're after your cake, ale and power showers. For mains, we'll be tucking into the relentless war on motorists. When should we start investing in the infrastructure that actually matters, our motorways and A-roads, rather than wasting it on the bloated and flailing beast that is HS2? And for the pudding, not so much a souffle of delight, but the day of the Triffids, the curse of the vegetables strikes again as another tyrannical vegan-only menu emerges in one of Britain's most illustrious institutions. A vegan activist will be here. He may cut the mustard, but he will butter no parsnips. State of the Nation starts now. We'll also be hearing from our venerable panel, our former editor of The Sun, Kelvin Mackenzie, and the assistant editor-in-chief of the London Financial, Andy MacDonald. As ever, I want to hear from you. It doesn't cost much to keep in touch. International direct emailing, mailmog@gbnews.uk. Well, you've had your canapes. Now time for something a bit heartier with Polly Middlehurst.
Good evening to you. I'm Aaron Armstrong in the GB newsroom. Nicola Sturgeon's insisted she had no prior knowledge the police would arrest her husband. Peter Murrell, the SNP's former chief executive, was arrested earlier in connection with an investigation into the party's finances.